So we had the category of finite dimensional representation of all 50. So with integrality condition on poles and zeros, parameters of simple modules, and then so I explained this is in fact it has a cluster algebra structure with quiver which is infinite. It's an infinite periodic quiver that we discussed several times, and so the cluster monomial corresponds to some sequences. And I have given a seed which is whose cluster variable corresponds to one-dimensional positive. There is some kind of canonical initial seed with all this one-dimensional. Okay, so what I do now, I will discuss a bit in more detail the case of SL2, which is quite particular in terms of combinatorics in this case. And then we'll see what we can do for infinite dimensional module. Where in fact, so for SL2, and I had some question yesterday that I don't quite answer today. We have to see the compatibility with for the category CL of representation for the ordinary. So to see the relation with what we have seen in the first part of the week, so remind that we had so this category CL of in C representation of the ordinary fine quantum group. And so it was defined by its botanic ring, which is generated by the family of okay, and we had an initial seed which was given by a finite linear quiver. So we had this fundamental module as part of the seed, and then Kirillov of degree 2, degree 3, W. So this one corresponds to a Fresnel variable, and we have this linear quiver. Something we have seen in the first part of the series of lecture. And so, so I was asked yesterday, how is it compatible with this infinite seed corresponding to the infinite quiver? So if we go to this category here, so we have this linear quiver without any, in fact, frozen variable here in this quiver. And in fact, in this case, it's quite easy to mutate in order to get such a seed. And maybe to do it, I should make more precise the definition of mutation of quivers that I have not given completely, because in the cases we have seen so far, it was enough just to reverse incoming and outgoing arrows to a vertex. So, the definition is not that mutation. At vertex. Okay. And so, in fact, there are three steps. So the first step is to look at all local configuration of this form. So two vertex I and G with one incoming arrows to K and one outcoming arrows. So when we have for each such configuration, then we add an arrow like this. So we add so that's the first step. The second, so that's a step that we did not have in the case of the quiver A2 that I explained. I gave as an example because there was only two vertices. So then, second step is to reverse all arrows, incoming or outcoming to K. So reverse. Okay. And the last point, so as in the definition of quiver cluster algebras, we need a quiver without loops and two cycles. So this process could make two cycles to appear. So we remove two cycles. So that's the mutation procedure at the level of quivers. And it can be shown that, in fact, it's an involutive process. If you mutate back at the same loops. Okay, so I just explained this because we will need this definition if we take this infinite quiver. And let's do a mutation, for example, at this vertex here. So we have to mutate the quiver and of course, the variable. So if we mutate the quiver here, so we follow this rule. We start by adding an arrow like this. So LQ2, LQ-2. I have not written here still the mutated variable. So there is an arrow like this. And then we reverse arrows. And then here we have some mutated variables that I have written yesterday. So it follows from this relation that I have written yesterday. So you take here the two-dimensional fundamental SL2, dimension 2, and in fact it decomposes the contact product with L1 decomposes in this way. And so this is a mutated. Okay, so I think yesterday I explained that it is mutated cluster variables, but I had not written the quiver here. Okay, so when you mutate, you get this one. So in fact, a posteriori, this is how the quiver is built, so that as a first step mutation, we get something a bit like for the category CL, that for finite dimensional modulus of ordinary quantum affine algebra, I explained there are the T systems, and so we construct the quiver. Okay, so that's one step. So it looks like this. So if we want to see, for example, this part to occur here, then we can do a second mutation at this vertex here. Okay, so we did here. So now let's mutate here. So we have some change. So this one will get mutated. Okay, so let's look at the whole here. So here we have, so we should look all configuration like in the step one. So there is one like this, okay, and one like this. So we have to add arrows. So a one like this, which corresponds to this path here, and one, in fact, like this, because we have this path here. Okay. So only two of them, and then so we reverse we reverse a rose. And now a 2 cycle has been created here, so we have to remove it. So suddenly this top, this vertex is no more connected to the upper part directly. And now this, so this is mutated, and you can check that it will produce a 3-dimensional evaluation module here. So this is W Q minus 1. So that's something that you can check by some knowledges of the Q character in this category. So the tensor product of this module by this module, so this is of dimension 3, will give a sum of a 2-dimensional module, the 1-dimensional module. Okay, and so so now you start to recognize here, in fact already at this step, you have this extracted quiver here, which corresponds to this one. In fact, if you continue, mutate here and here and here, you will gradually make this quiver appear here. So you might see this cluster algebra variable at the top as a sub-algebra of this quiver algebra, but you have to do some mutations. And it corresponds to the fact that, of course, the category CL is a subcategory, submodular category of this. But yes, you have to do some mutations to see this module. Any question about this? So you see, this is SL2, just a linear quiver. So the arrow changes, but when you go to merge types, of course, combinatorics are more involved.
I have a question. When you do this in more general type, every mutation you have to check a Q character identity, right?
Yes.
So what is the, like an easy order of mutations so that you get some tractable relations?
So that's of course an important point. So for the general quiver you have some column like this, and the mutation is to it's kind of SL2 reduction. We use such kind of mutation column by column, and for such column we can keep track of the relation. So for the T systems, of some variation of T systems. So one yes, part of the proof and one difficulty is to identify which exchange relation we can control categorically. So if you do it randomly, yeah, you cannot say.
I'm sorry, this is kind of naive and probably obvious for cluster algebras, but how can we make sure that if we don't do things randomly, we don't get any new cluster variables or monomials? How do we know that if we don't choose a random sequence of mutations, we can't get any new cluster monomials?
So if you do random mutation, you get representation. So that's a part of the proof. And maybe if I understand your question, when you do the specific sequence of mutation, you have to do some analysis of the quiver and the cluster variable so it's a proof, and to check in parallel that you know the parameter of the representation to get.
That's not exactly my questions. How this I can believe that it works out that if you choose this particular sequence of mutations, you can keep track of the TQ relations and prove everything. Yeah. My question was more like, if we do some random sequence of mutations, how can we have any kind of control at what appears at the kth step?
So that's the other part of the proof. So it's related to screening the parameters. So when you do other exchange relation, you write an exchange relation. So you have so you produce a new cluster variables, and a priori it is in the fraction field of the Grothendieck ring. Mm-hmm. But we prove that it stays in the Grothendieck ring, and one way to prove it, in this case, of finite dimensional modules, is because you know some characterization of the image of the Q character morphism. Screenings are derivations, so it's kind of compatible with exchange relation.
Sorry. What happened to the arrow from LQ squared to W2? Is it,
Which one?
if I mutate from at LQ?
Yes,
Oh,
I,
two?
exactly. I just forgot about it.
Ah, okay.
Sorry. My mistake. Yes, it's necessary. Yes, when you. In fact, it will disappear as the next step when you mutate here because you will produce. Okay. Any other question?
Sorry, so to produce, to have subquiver like we wanted, we should subsequently start with some point and do these mutations in vertices.
Yes, yes. The next one will be here.
Mm-hmm. And I also can go up and do the same.
You could alternatively go up. Yes, yes.
And it will be like
It will-
respond to some symmetry or what?
There is some. Well, it's very symmetric. You will get category CL, but shifted.
I mean, on the order
Parameters.
from the point of this representation theory, it
Yes,
responds to some symmetry.
Yes, you get a category
Mm-hmm.
which is equivalent to this one. In fact, obtained from this one by an automorphism of the quantum loop algebra corresponding to a loop rotation of the loop parameter.
Ah, okay.
There are families of automorphism of the algebra. So that's kind of spectral parameter shift of the category. Combinatorially, the same. Categorically, it's equivalent. Okay. Good. So now the remaining time, I would like to discuss category O. So it's a bit more complicated. There are some infinite dimensional modules. So we again get some starting points, maybe something we know, and so that there is a family of relations here that we can use, which are called QQ relations. So I'll maybe give example of SL2, explain where it comes from and how it can be used. So yes, I want to emphasize, in fact, the strategy here. Again, to start with some local knowledge of the category to build this kind of global structure. So for SL2, there is some relation which is known for a long time. In fact, in the case of representation of the Borel algebra, which is called the quantum Wronskian relations. Which is due to Bajanov, Lukyanov, and Zamolodchikov, in fact, in this case of SL2. So it can be interpreted in this framework in the following way. So you take this one-dimensional positive prefundamental modules that we have seen already, and then we look at the transfer product with so this negative prefundamentals, infinite dimensional representation that I explained. So I just recall you that this corresponds to this rational fraction, and this corresponds to the inverse of a degree 1 polynomial. So that's a representation of SL2 hat with positive shift. This one with negative shift. So these are not representation of the same algebra. This one is one-dimensional, this one is infinite dimensional, but as I explained yesterday, using the Drinfeld topological coproduct, you may look you look at some tensor product of T, in particular the product of the two in the category O. So of course this is now infinite dimensional, so we are completely out of this ring here. And this product in fact has a very nice form. So in fact it is not reducible. It is not irreducible, sorry, but it's of length 2. Again, so length 2 relation. So there is 1 plus a product like this. So we have LQ2 and Q minus 2. Okay. So that's the decomposition into simple. This one is irreducible in this. You see, it's almost of the same form, except that we have modified the spectral parameters. So it looks good, again, because it's a product of 2, which is the sum, so it looks like an exchange relation. And, but it is quite kind of different nature as the relation that we had for finite dimensional G. It's not like a T-system or all kind of relations. So, there are 2 questions. So how to describe a cluster algebra, so that this relation again will be an exchange relation, and also is there a general framework for all types? So in fact for general types there is an analog of this relation. So there is, so it's generalized to what is called the QQ system. So this system of relation, in fact, originated in the study of affine operators. So originated. Affine operators. Okay, so it's a work of Raimondo and Valéry. So it's a system of so we can write it's a system of functional relations. So let's write it. So how it looks. So it depends on some variables which are parameterized by a Weyl group element. W is an element in the Weyl group of the underlying finite dimensional the algebra G. Then a node of the Dicke diagram of G, and still a spectral parameter. So we have some indeterminate like this. So this is a coweight. So the Weyl group element is applied to the fundamental coweight, and the relation is quite similar to this one. So it's of the following form. So you take Q W Fi A, let's say Q I square. So this one will come from this term, and then you have something like this. So it's comparable to the difference between this term and this term. And so then this is equal to product of Q variables. So this one is equal to Q variables. Of certain Q variables, W omega G. So G is G. Maybe with some multiplicity. So for the same G, you may have several factors corresponding to G and with some spectral parameter. So I want to emphasize, so this is a relation which should hold for any W, I, and A. So it's a system of relations. So that's why it's called the Q system with all these determinants. So you may look at it formally, but in fact it was shown to be satisfied by some transition functions of various bases of solutions of certain differential systems coming from affine hoppers. Okay, and then so there is this general conjecture, maybe you heard about it, which is called ODE QIM conjecture, or maybe duality. Stated in physics, so ODE is for ordinary differential equation and QIM, which in fact state that certain quantities on one side can be seen, maybe compared to other quantity on the quantum integrable, for some quantum integrable model related to the differential system. So this is a bit vague, but in fact it was nicely reformulated by Feigin and Frenkel in the context of geometric Lagrange. So reformulated. So in terms. So completely conjecturally, but in fact, if you believe in this conjecture, then if such relations appears for these affine hoppers, then such relation should be satisfied by eigenvalues of transfer matrices of some integrable systems. And from the point of view of representation theory, it means that such a relation should hold in Grothendieck ring of Hopf algebra related to this integrable system. So at the end, the question is it possible to find such relation in the category, in the Grothendieck ring we are looking at? And so in fact, it's true. So that we have this theorem that we proved with Edward Frenkel. So, in fact, as you see, a bit different motivation, not related to cluster algebra. So we prove the construction, let's say, existence. Construction of a solution in so in fact originally we wrote it in terms of the representation of Borel algebra, and it makes also sense in fact for this category O. And in fact with some joint work with Andrei we made very precise relation between the formulation of the QQ system for the Borel algebra and the shifted quantum group. So one point of this solution is that the terms corresponding to the neutral Weyl group elements are exactly the positive prefundamental. The initial condition here is a class that we have some terms that we know already.
I understand correctly, the difference between O spherical and C spherical is that you allow negative bits also in.
Sorry?
So that what is the difference between C category C shifted and O shifted?
The category C shifted is only finite dimensional modules. The category O is much larger, so like I mean for representation theory of Casse-Moody algebras, So you allow infinite dimensional modules, but graded by finite dimensional weight spaces, with some condition on the weights, that the weight which occur should be in a finite union of. So that's like in the book of the category of generalized symmetrizable Casmodi algebra. We take the same definition.
So somehow this QQ system also contains the cluster relations in some sense.
Well, this is what we want to know, that I explain now. So for the moment, we know a cluster structure for finite dimensional modules. But if we want, for example, to make sense of this relation from the cluster algebra point of view, here, we have some infinite dimensional modules. This one is infinite dimensional. So it does not hold in a C, but in the category. Okay, so good. So maybe let me state a theorem now. So I will state it for AD types. We are in the process of proving the analog of this theorem for general type. It's written only for AD types. So the following that, so it's a joint work with Christophe Geis. And, so we define some explicit right. So it's in fact it's a family of quivers. It's not as canonical as what we had here for the periodic one. And the theorem is the following: is that so what you expect? So if we take the category, the Grothendieck ring of this category O, then it is isomorphic to this cluster algebra up to some completion. So in fact, up to completion. So you could recall here that we allow infinite length module. So maybe a way to formulate this up to completion, it means that we found an injection from the cluster algebra into this Grothendieck ring, so that the topological closure of the image is the whole Grothendieck ring. That's the precise statement. And that's one point. And also here we find the families of initial clusters, and all cluster variables in our initial cluster are Q variables. So the initial they belong to the Q variables. And in fact, we also prove that all Q variables appear as cluster variables. So Q variables. And also all these QQ relations can be realized as exchange relation, as you can see. So it took us some time, I should say, to find the framework, because at the beginning we were working with representation of the Borel algebra, and which looks similar, but which is not exactly the same. And we had many issues with tensor product decomposition, which involved infinitely many terms. So this is a better framework. So let me explain for SL2, where we can see this very explicitly, because I have not defined the quiver here or anything. So let's. So for SL2, it will also be infinite linear quiver, but maybe you remember the talk of Bernard on Tuesday. So it will not be equilibrium oriented, almost equilibrium oriented. So you have some kind of there is one arrow which is. So this is our quiver. It's kind of periodic downstairs, also upstairs, and there is just one arrow inverted. So that's the only difference. So it could look very thin, but it changes a lot. And here we put some, so as we did previously, this one-dimensional representation. And then when the arrow is inverted, we change to infinite dimensional module. So this is our initial seed for SL2. And so, and here, in fact, it's easy to observe the way how the Q system appears here. If you do the mutation here, at this vertex, so what do you get? So you have a new cluster variable, so it should be equal to what? So there is just outcoming arrows. So it will be 1 plus LQ2 LQ minus 2. And you see that you recognize exactly the QQC, the quantum Wronskian relation here. It means that the mutated cluster variable here will be 1 L1 minus. So do not change the other cluster variables. And here, so there is no triangle. So when you do the mutation, you just reverse the arrow. So it means that this one is reverse. This one is reverse, and this one keep it. And you see that you can observe something quite nice. It's almost the same cluster as you had here, except that it's shifted. So you get the same, but the inverted arrow, which was here, now is here. And as it's up of one step, in fact, here you have now the infinite dimensional module here. So it's the same, shifted by a power of Q. And similarly, if you do the mutation here, it will be exactly the same. So this arrow will go up now. This one will go down. And this one will go down. So and here you use the QQ system, but for Q minus 2, and you will have the one-dimensional module here. So again, you get the same. It's the same seed that here, but it's shifted by Q minus 2. So there is some kind of symmetry of this quiver where you have the seeds come by families. See, I told you it's not a unique initial seed, but you have families where you have almost the symmetric. The periodic quiver, except that there is some place where it's slightly modified. And at this place, we go from infinite dimensional modules to finite dimensional modules. So these are the initial first time mutation at this specific vertices. But if you mutate, you can also mutate upstairs or downstairs, and then you will go back to the same kind of mutation that I wrote today a bit earlier. So for this part and this part, you have the QT relation, as we wrote, but in the specific part, it's different. Okay, so this is for SL2. Let me explain for SL3. obtained. So for SS3, if you remember, so we had a periodic quiver like this, so two columns. So that's a periodic quiver, and so our quiver here will be built a bit in the same way. So the upstairs it will be the periodic quiver, downstairs it will be the periodic quiver, and there will be some kind of bit slightly more complicated part of the quiver. And okay, so let me see if I write it correctly. So yes. So here you will take some kind of longer row. So here it will go down. Yes, longer row. Go back. So this is for SS3. So you see, you take a periodic quiver with triangles, as we had. Below it's a periodic quiver with triangle, and then there are three quadrilateral. So this kind of more complicated part is some kind of analog of the fact that the arrows is modified here. Okay. So this is again built so that from the QQ relation.
So is it possible to see the Weil group in these pictures?
So the Weil group is
hiding.
Yes, in fact, we have a family of initial seeds which depends on some reduced expression of the Weil group. So you see that you have also three quadrilaterals, so three.
For each reduced expression.
Corresponds to the length of the longest Weil group element.
So that's S1, S2, S1, and you could also do S2, S1, S2. Okay.
And so maybe let me write the initial seed here. So you have here again the one-dimensional modules. And so here's the same. Okay, and so it did not prepare completely, but here you have also L2 minus 2. And here, when we have this arrows which goes down, then we change to a Q variable which will correspond, so which will be in the orbit of omega 1, so it will be omega 2 minus omega 1. With a Q variable which does not correspond to one-dimensional modules and not also to negative prefundamental modules. So that's another one. Okay, and here we go directly to the negative prefundamental module, but corresponding to 1. And we shift to minus 5. So this column is a bit similar to what we had previously, except that we go from 2 to 1, and there is a different shift of spectral parameter. So here we have a Q variable again, the same form. Shifted, and then when we go down here, we go to L2. And it should be L2Q minus 6. And we go back to our Q. So we have yes. So this part is familiar. That's a periodic quiver with a negative prefundamental. This one is periodic with a one-dimensional modules, and then there is some kind of more complicated part of the quiver, which, as soon as the types get more complicated, this complicated part is larger and larger. But one point, and this is a part of our proof, in fact, this translation property that we had above holds for general types. So this part of the quiver can be complicated, can be translated up and down by using some specific sequence of mutations, which involves only QQ relation. I would like also to emphasize that, so here I said, okay, when we mutate here, this arrow here, inverted arrow, go down, but we can mutate again below. So this arrow will go down again, and we can continue. It means that these inverted arrows go down as much as you want, and at the limit, you get rid of it. And you have some kind of limit seed with only one-dimensional modules and linear pendular quiver. And you go back to the initial seed of finite-dimensional modules, which is inside. But you cannot go back, because when you have sent your inverted arrows and infinity, you cannot take it back. And so this corresponds to the fact that the Grothendieck of finite-dimensional modules is a strict subring of the ambient Grothendieck of the category. The same holds for general types, where this complicated part of this quiver can be put below. So that's again a part of the proof. So maybe I will not give much details on how it proves. So some remarks.
Now, here as part of this theorem, the initial seed are the Q variables, namely these formal things that you defined with Frenkel.
Yes. So
They're not necessarily the classes of the simples, which is the subject of the QQ conjecture, which is a different thing.
Yes. So it will be part of the statement here. So, but because we will conjecture that all cluster monomials will correspond to simple modules, so some kind of vast generalization of this.
Which would imply the QQ conjecture with L.
But these are only so the initial cluster variable of one seed, that some of the Q variables, not all of them, as we can see here. Or maybe one comment also, I did so. So these two families correspond to the Q variables of the positive and the negative fundamental weight. Okay. So that's something I should have said. And this one should be, I think, LQ minus 2 as far as I know. Okay, so this, in the case of SL2, of course, in the orbit for the Weyl group action of fundamental weights, you have only two weights, and they correspond to these two family, two representations, negative prefundamental. But when you go to SL3, of course, you have more weights. Omega 1. So two orbits, 6 weights, and so this one is, so 6 families of Q variables, and again this one is this one-dimensional modulus. This one is infinite dimensional prefundamental, but here we had one, here we have two. Also a simple module, for SS3, which corresponds to this variable. So it corresponds to some new variable. But in fact, these weights are related to the shift, the shifted quantum affine algebra. So it indicates this slice representation for the shifted quantum affine algebra of this shift. So that's why we use co-weight. This one also corresponds to this co-weight. So there is some kind of relation between the parameters of the Q variables and the shift of the shifted quantum affine algebra. So everything is coherent. Okay. So now we have the conjecture that we are just discussing with Christophe and Bernard. We conjecture that cluster monomials corresponds to simple classes. So it can be seen both as a generalization of the statements of finite dimensional modules, the theorem of Kashiwara, Kimura, and Park, and also the Q system conjecture that the Q variables correspond to simple classes. So all these statements follows from this conjecture. So for the moment, it's an open conjecture, even for SL3. But for SL2, we could prove it's true. So in the same paper, we gave a proof for. And it's a kind of proof that cannot be extended because we just compute all cluster monomials here. All seeds, and there is, in fact, in this case, we can describe all simple classes, and we are again in a situation where simple modules are real. We can by hand check that it works. Okay, so as we said, so it implies. So if this is true, so this conjecture. A conjecture that we had formulated with Frenkel that all these Q variables correspond to simple classes. Q variables. Correct. Okay, so there are still nice things you can do with this picture. So in fact, my PhD student Francesca Paganelli could define a quantization of this Grothendieck ring by defining a nice deformation of the cluster algebra. So there is a theorem of existence of quantum torus, which allows to define a quantum cluster algebra, and which is compatible with known quantum Grothendieck rings with finite dimensional modules. And then, so as I mentioned, so in our work in progress with Christophe and Bernard, we are working on the non-simply based cases. But in fact, there are many technical difficulties because in the proof here, we used a nice kind of slice decomposition of the quiver in our proof that, in fact, does not hold for what we observed for V2, for example, and for general cases. And so, yes, and so there is something. So to get rid of the complicated part as infinity, so in the AD types, we take this complicated part and we move it below at the infinity. There is some technical things for simply laced types that, in fact, it does not work. And so we have to do it column by column. So that's kind of to give you an idea of some kind of differences. And there is also one point in that, so as I said, you get different families of initial clusters, which corresponds to different decomposition of the Weil group. And if you want things to work, you should prove that everything is compatible. So meaning that the quiver are mutation equivalent, and that you can get, and that you will get the same cluster algebra, the same isomorphism between the cluster algebra. So it was contained in the proof of the theorem for type AD, and for a non-simplest case, it's quite complicated, especially for G2. So we need so there are two families of initial clusters, and we need a sequence of mutation of 162 mutations to get from one to the other. And so that's a part of the difficulties we have, but I expect we converge this year too.
So that part is the difficulty for the category O shifted or even for Z shifted.
Sorry, two?
For the non-simplest types.
No, for the non-simplest case, it's okay for this category. For this one, it's a uniform theorem for all types. You get the periodic infinite quiver, and everything works. But so what I for this category, so for the moment, this theorem is for AD types, and the technical difficulties comes for this category, not for this one. Yes, okay.
Thank you.